The Gentle Giant. Chapter 1, The Fearsome Giant in the Mountains. Section 1, The Village Rumors. The village was a small community surrounded by rich nature. Green fields stretched out, and the sound of the river was always heard, a peaceful place. But there was one shadow over the hearts of the villagers. Rumors of a fearsome giant said to live deep in the mountains. I heard they found a huge footprint in the mountains. In the village square, some boys were talking excitedly. The footprint is many times bigger than a human's. My father said it must belong to the giant. That's so scary. My mom said we should never go near the mountains. The adults in the village listened to the boys' conversation, frowning. The rumors about the giant spread, and soon, the villagers were afraid of the mountains. What should we do, Mayor? If there really is a giant, the village could be in danger. One day, during a village meeting, a worried villager asked the mayor. That's a possibility, but no one has ever seen the giant. It might just be a rumor. However, we should be cautious. Let's avoid going to the mountains, the mayor answered calmly. But there was a hidden worry in his expression. Section 2, Emily's Curiosity. A little away from the village square, a girl sat quietly. Her name was Emily. She was known to be a bit odd, but there was a strong will in her clear eyes. Every time she heard the rumors about the giant, Emily felt a stirring in her heart. If the giant really exists, I want to meet it, she whispered to herself. To Emily, the unknown was not something to fear, but something to be curious about. She understood why her family and friends were afraid of the giant. But she couldn't quite grasp their fear. Emily, you're thinking about something strange again, aren't you? Her younger brother, Taro, called out to her. Taro knew well how strong Emily's curiosity was. No, not really. I was just wondering if the giant really exists. She replied with a smile, but there was determination in her smile. Section 3, The Family's Opposition. At dinner that evening, Emily's family gathered around the table, while her mother served warm soup. She asked Emily, what did you hear in the village today? Well, it seems the giant rumors are still spreading. Emily answered as she spooned the soup. I don't want to hear any more about the giant. There's no way it actually exists, her father said, a bit annoyed. But, Dad, what if the giant really does exist? What would you do? When Emily asked, her father looked at her seriously. Emily, there's no need to think about that. Whether the giant exists or not doesn't matter. Don't get involved in such things, he warned her firmly. But Emily tried to argue, but her mother gently stopped her. Emily, your father is right. There's no need to involve yourself in anything dangerous, her mother said with a soft voice filled with concern for Emily. Emily understood her family's worries, but she couldn't suppress the curiosity growing inside her. She felt a strong urge to find out the truth. Section 4, A Hidden Decision. That night, Emily lay in bed, unable to sleep. The moonlight softly illuminated her room. The conversation with her family kept repeating in her mind. Why am I so curious about the giant? As she asked herself, she glanced out the window. She could see the dark silhouette of the mountains in the distance. She desperately wanted to know the truth hidden in those mountains. If the giant really exists, I want to see it with my own eyes. If no one else will go, I'll have to go myself. Emily quietly made up her mind. She didn't want to worry her family or the villagers anymore. So she decided to go to the mountains without telling anyone. I'll leave early in the morning before anyone notices, she promised herself and fell asleep, dreaming of the adventure that awaited her in the mountains. Section 5, The Early Morning Departure. The next morning, while the village was still quiet, Emily quietly left her house. She carried only the bare necessities and began walking in the darkness. The cool pre-dawn air touched her skin. This is the right thing to do. Emily told herself as she walked the path leading to the mountains. Her heart was pounding with excitement and fear. But she never thought about turning back. As she left the village and reached the foot of the mountains, the sun began to rise slowly above the horizon. The sky gradually brightened, revealing the rugged mountains before her. "This is the beginning of my adventure," Emily thought. As she carefully began climbing the mountain path, she gathered her courage to meet the giant and continued forward. Chapter 2: The Fateful Encounter with the Giant. Section 6: Exploring the Mountain. Emily carefully climbed the steep mountain path. The morning dew glistened on the leaves, and the ground was covered with soft fallen leaves. As she walked, her heart filled with excitement at the sight of the nature around her. What will I find at the end of this path? Emily's mind was full of curiosity. As she went deeper into the mountain, the silence around her grew. The birds' songs gradually faded away, and only the sound of the wind rustling the trees could be heard. "Is it around here?" She suddenly stopped and looked around. At that moment, she noticed a large shadow on the ground. The shadow belonged to none other than the giant. Could it be? Emily held her breath and slowly approached the shadow. When she looked down, she saw a giant footprint clearly imprinted in the ground. The size was far beyond her imagination. There really is a giant. Emily's heart raced with both excitement and fear, but her feet did not stop. The footprints led further into the mountain, and Emily continued to follow them. Section 7: Finding the Giant's Home. After walking for a while, Emily arrived at the entrance of a massive cave. The cave was covered in rock, and its depths were shrouded in darkness. However, Emily instinctively knew that this was where the giant lived. "This is where the giant lives." Though nervous, her curiosity drove her to step into the cave. The air inside was cool, and she felt a chill on her skin. She was a bit scared, but she took out her flashlight and pointed it forward. In the beam of light, something glittered. It was a giant stone bed with an old blanket on top. Further inside, there were large, worn-out dishes scattered around. "He really does live here." Emily stopped and listened to the silence of the cave. Then, she heard a faint sound from far away. It was like someone was slowly walking toward her. Section 8: The First Meeting. The sound grew louder, and soon, a huge shadow appeared from the depths of the cave. Emily gasped in surprise. Before her stood the giant, just as the rumors had said. The giant noticed Emily and stopped. His eyes looked down at her. And though she was overwhelmed by his size, Emily couldn't look away. The giant's face was stern, but there was a kindness in his eyes. "Are you the giant?" Emily asked in a trembling voice. The giant seemed surprised for a moment, but then he slowly smiled. "Yes, I am the giant who lives in this mountain. But I am not as frightening as you might think." The giant's voice was deep and calm. It echoed in the cave and gave Emily a sense of comfort. "Why are people so afraid of you?" Emily asked, her curiosity now stronger than her fear. She wanted to know the truth about the giant. The giant thought for a moment before answering. "It's because I am so big and strange looking. But I have no intention of hurting anyone. In fact, I live here to protect the village." Section 9: The Conversation of Fear and Surprise. Emily was amazed by the giant's words. She never expected that he lived in the mountains to protect the village. "But why do you protect the village?" Emily asked further. The giant smiled slightly and answered. "A long time ago, I was an ordinary human. But something happened that turned me into this form. At that time, I made a promise to the people of the village. It is my mission to protect them." Emily listened closely, trying to understand the story behind the giant's words. "Why is that promise so important to you?" The giant closed his eyes for a moment, as if recalling past memories. "It's because it's my only connection to the world. I can never return to being a normal human. But as long as I keep that promise, I have a reason to continue living here." Emily was moved by the giant's words, and sensed his loneliness and responsibility. "Aren't you lonely?" When Emily asked, the giant looked a bit sad but soon smiled again. "I may be lonely, but I must fulfill this mission. Even if the villagers fear me, it is my fate." Section 10 The Beginning of Friendship. After hearing those words, Emily's fear of the giant completely disappeared. She felt a deep affection and respect for him. "If you don't mind, can I be your friend?" Emily's offer seemed to surprise the giant, but he soon smiled. "A friend? I've never been asked that before. But it might not be such a bad idea." Emily felt that coming to meet the giant was the right decision. "Thank you. Can I come to see you again?" When Emily asked, the giant nodded gently. "Of course, Emily. With a friend like you, I won't feel lonely anymore." And so, a new friendship blossomed between Emily and the giant. They talked and laughed together in the cave for a while. Emily knew she would never forget this day. Chapter 3 The Giant's Past and Secrets. Section 11 Memories of the Giant's Past. The next day, Emily went to the mountain again where the giant lived. The encounter from the previous day had left a deep impression on her, and she wanted to learn more about the giant's past. The giant welcomed Emily warmly, and the two sat outside the cave to talk. From the top of the mountain, the village looked small, and the breeze gently wrapped around them. "Yesterday, you said you used to be a normal human. How did you become a giant?" Emily asked quietly, her eyes filled with sincere curiosity. The giant gazed into the distant sky for a moment, before slowly beginning to speak. "It was many decades ago. I was an ordinary young man living in this village. I had family and friends, and I lived a peaceful life. But one day, a terrible disaster struck the village." Emily held her breath at his words. "A disaster? What happened?" The giant nodded and continued. "There was a massive fire that engulfed the entire village. The cause is unknown, but a wildfire spread rapidly and consumed the village. I tried desperately to save my family, but the flames spread too quickly, and I couldn't do anything." There was a deep regret in the giant's voice. "But something happened at that moment. I was on the verge of losing my life, but a mysterious power saved me. That power transformed me into a giant." Emily was astonished. "A mysterious power? What kind of power was it?" The giant smiled softly and answered. "It was the guardian power that has long resided in this land. I was reborn as a giant to protect the village. But in exchange, I lost my life as a human." Section 12 The Reason for Protecting the Village. Emily was deeply moved by the giant's story. She realized that he was not just a frightening being, but someone who had become a giant to protect the village. "So, you've been protecting the village ever since?" Emily said with gratitude in her voice, and the giant nodded quietly. "Yes. Ever since I became this giant, I have watched over the village. When disaster threatened, I came out of the mountains to help, many times. But each time, the villagers grew more fearful and distant from me." There was a hint of sadness in the giant's voice. "It's understandable that they fear me. My appearance is too different from a human. But even so, I see it as my mission to continue protecting them." Emily was touched by the giant's selflessness. "It's so sad that no one knows you've been protecting the village." Emily murmured. She began to understand just how lonely the giant must have been. "That's okay, Emily. I don't need their gratitude or praise. All I want is for the village to remain peaceful." The giant's words were filled with unwavering conviction. Section 13 Misunderstandings with the Villagers. As Emily listened to the giant's story, she realized how much the villagers had misunderstood him. "But the villagers didn't know you were protecting them. So they misunderstood you," Emily said, her heart aching for the giant's loneliness. Yes, they grew fearful of me and avoided me. I didn't try to change that. It's natural for them to be afraid. And I didn't want them to come near and be put in danger. The giant continued quietly. But sometimes, because of those misunderstandings, the villagers have seen me as an enemy. They thought I was bringing disaster to the village and tried to drive me away. Each time, I could only watch silently and help them without them knowing. Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes. That must have been so hard for you, Emily said softly, and the giant gave a small smile. It was difficult at times. But even so, I will continue to protect the village. It's my destiny. The giant's words carried a deep sense of resolve. Section 14 Emily's determination. As Emily listened to the giant, she began to think about what she could do to help him. Can't you let everyone know that you've been protecting the village? Emily asked bravely. The giant fell silent for a moment, deep in thought. It's not an easy thing to do. The villagers have feared me for so long. It won't be easy to remove that fear. But I'll tell them. I'll let everyone know that you've been protecting the village. If they understand that, you won't be lonely anymore. Emily's words were strong and direct. Her eyes shone with unwavering determination. The giant looked at Emily for a while. Then quietly nodded, accepting her resolve. All right, Emily, if you're willing to do that, I'll believe in you. But don't push yourself too hard. Even if the villagers don't believe you, it's enough for me that you understand. Emily nodded firmly. Thank you. I'll make sure everyone knows you're a kind giant. Section 15 The Giant's Request. As their conversation drew to a close, the giant seemed to remember something and said, Emily, I have one more request. Emily looked at the giant in surprise. What is it? I'll do anything. The giant looked a bit sad as he continued. If the villagers can't accept me, please forget about me. And to keep the village safe, please keep my existence a secret. I only want the village to remain safe. Emily was momentarily confused by his words but soon understood. The giant was worried that his existence might become a burden to the village. I understand, but I won't give up. I'll do everything I can to make the villagers understand you. The giant deeply appreciated Emily's words and smiled once again. Thank you, Emily. Just knowing how you feel is enough for me. With that, Emily promised the giant and decided to return to the village. Her heart was filled with a strong desire to help the giant out of his loneliness. Chapter 4 Return to the Village and Trials. Section 16 Return to the Village. Emily held the conversation with the giant close to her heart. As she descended the mountain and returned to the village, on her way down, she remembered the events the giant had spoken of, and his deep loneliness. As she got closer to the village, she began to see its familiar landscape. But her heart felt heavy, unsure of how to convey the giant's story to the villagers. When she arrived back in the village, her family was waiting anxiously. As soon as her mother saw her, she rushed over and hugged her tightly. Emily, where have you been? We were so worried about you. Her mother's voice was filled with relief, but also anger and fear. Emily sighed quietly in her mother's arms and then slowly began to speak. I'm sorry, Mom, but I had to find out the truth. That's why I went to the mountains to meet the giant. Her mother was shocked by her words and loosened her grip on Emily for a moment. You went to meet the giant? Emily, how could you do something like that? Her father came over as well, looking at her seriously. Did you really meet the giant? Her father asked, and Emily quietly nodded. Yes, I did. And I learned the truth about him. Her family was too surprised to speak for a while. Eventually, her father spoke softly. Emily, is it true? The giant doesn't plan to attack the village? That's right, Dad. He's been protecting the village all this time. But everyone misunderstood him. Emily's voice was full of conviction. She was driven by a strong desire to share the giant's truth with her family. Section 17 The villagers' reactions. The next day, with her family's support, Emily decided to tell the village elder about the giant. In the village square, the elder and a few villagers gathered to listen to Emily's story. The elder, surprised by Emily's visit, listened quietly to what she had to say. "Elder, I have something to tell everyone. It's about the giant." Emily began speaking slowly but with firm determination. The villagers were murmuring among themselves, but paid close attention to her words. "Yesterday, I climbed the mountain and met the giant. He has no intention of attacking the village. In fact, he has been protecting us all along." Emily's words shocked the villagers, and whispers spread among them. Can that really be true? A giant protecting the village? That's hard to believe. The elder stared at Emily, thinking deeply. "Emily, if what you say is true, then we have made a great mistake. But why would he need to protect the village?" Emily took a deep breath and explained in detail that the giant was once human and had taken on the mission of protecting the village. "He has been watching over us all this time. I understand why everyone has been afraid of him. But it's a misunderstanding. He's there to protect us." The villagers listened carefully, but they still seemed uncertain. "But why didn't he say anything before? If he's really protecting us, he should have told us sooner," one villager said aloud. Emily remembered why the giant hadn't wanted to scare the villagers and explained it. "He didn't want to surprise or frighten you. He just wanted to watch over us quietly." Section 18 Evidence and Persuasion. To ease the villagers' anxiety, Emily decided to show the evidence the giant had given her. She took out the old tools the giant had used, and the items left from when he saved the village from the wildfire. "Please look at these. These are the tools he used to protect the village. And these are from when he saved us from the wildfire. You can see how much effort he has put into keeping us safe." The villagers stared at the items, and the murmuring began to quiet down. "He really has been protecting us," one villager murmured. The elder took the items in his hands, thinking deeply. Finally, he spoke in a serious tone. "Emily's words are worth believing. If he has truly been protecting the village, we must show our gratitude. But it will take time to accept this." Emily nodded, understanding that it would take time to convince the villagers. "Of course, elder. I won't rush it. But I hope everyone will eventually understand and accept him." The elder nodded in response and expressed his gratitude to Emily. "Thank you for telling us, Emily. We will take this matter seriously and think carefully." Section 19 The Reunion with the Giant. A few days later, Emily and the villagers went back to the mountain to meet the giant. The elder led the way, and a few volunteers from the village came to confirm the truth. Emily felt nervous, but she believed that introducing the villagers to the giant would open their hearts. As they walked along the mountain path, some villagers began to feel uneasy. But Emily reassured them with a gentle voice. "It's okay. He won't harm you. In fact, I'm sure he'll welcome you." Finally, the group arrived at the entrance of the giant's cave. Emily took a deep breath and called into the cave. "Mr. Giant, it's me. I've brought the villagers. They want to talk with you." After a moment of silence, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from within the cave. Then, the giant slowly appeared. The villagers were startled by his size and took a step back. But Emily smiled and approached the giant. "Everyone, this is the giant who has been protecting our village," Emily said as she introduced the giant to the villagers. The giant nodded quietly and began to speak in a low, gentle voice. "I have watched over you all for many years. The reason I am in this form is to protect the village. Please believe my words." The villagers were speechless for a while. But finally, The elder stepped forward. Giant, it seems we have misunderstood you for a long time. If you have truly been protecting us, then we must show our gratitude. From now on, we wish to work together to protect the village, not in fear. The giant deeply appreciated the elder's words and bowed his head. Thank you. I will continue to protect the village. That is my mission. Section 20 Reconciliation with the village. That day, the villagers and the giant had a long conversation. They unraveled past misunderstandings and fears, and decided to accept the giant's presence. Emily watched over them, feeling joy in her heart. Now, finally, everyone can be united. Emily smiled at the giant, and he smiled back quietly. Yes, Emily, from now on, we will live together as part of the village. After that, the village held a festival to welcome the giant. And the whole village came together to celebrate. The giant was accepted as a member of the village, and his importance to the village was reaffirmed. Thus, the giant and the villagers reconciled and built a new relationship. The village regained its peace and security. And Emily's friendship with the giant grew even stronger. Chapter 5 A New Beginning. Section 21 Resuming Peaceful Days. After the festival, the village returned to its calm and peaceful daily life. However, there was a newfound sense of unity among the villagers. The acceptance of the giant as part of the village brought a fresh breeze to the community. One morning, Emily woke up early and headed to the village square. The villagers were working as usual, but there was a brighter atmosphere. The knowledge that the giant was living nearby and watching over them gave everyone new energy. Good morning, Emily. One of the villagers called out cheerfully. Good morning, Emily replied with equal enthusiasm. That day, Emily made her way to the mountain where the giant lived. The giant was standing in front of the cave, seemingly keeping watch over the village. There was a look of relief on his face. Good morning, Mr. Giant. Emily waved as she approached, and the giant smiled gently. Good morning, Emily. The village is peaceful today, too. Yes, I'm so glad everyone believes in you now, Emily said, sitting down beside the giant. She felt joy in the fact that the village was once again at peace. That's right. My wish is for this village to remain peaceful like this. The giant answered quietly, looking down at the village. Section 22 Friendship between the giant and Emily. Emily and the giant became closer friends than ever before. She visited the mountain almost every day, sitting with the giant as they watched over the village and talked about many things. The giant also began to look forward to spending time with Emily. One day, Emily asked the giant a thought-provoking question. Mr. Giant, if you could become human again, what would you do? The giant thought for a moment before answering. That's a difficult question. If I could return to being human, I might want to live a normal life with my family and friends. But now, I feel that my mission is to protect this village. So even if I could go back, I would prioritize fulfilling this mission. Emily was deeply moved by his words. The giant's strong sense of responsibility and loyalty to protecting the village resonated in her heart. You're truly an amazing person, Mr. Giant. I want to be like you, Emily said, looking at the giant with sincere admiration. Thank you, Emily. But you're already amazing. Your courage has supported me all this time. The giant gently looked at Emily and softly held her hand. Section 23 Planning a New Village Festival. With the giant now accepted as a member of the village, the villagers decided to plan a new festival. This festival was to show their gratitude to the giant for his efforts in protecting the village. We want to do something special for Mr. Giant. The women of the village gathered to discuss the preparations for the festival. Yes, it's because of him that we can live peacefully now, another woman added, and everyone nodded in agreement. The men of the village were busy preparing decorations and food for the festival. Special dishes were created, including fruits. The giant liked and meals prepared especially for him. The entire village enthusiastically worked together to prepare for the event. This festival isn't just a celebration. It's a day to honor our life with the giant. The village elder encouraged the villagers as they worked. Section 24. The day of the festival. Finally, the day of the festival arrived. The village was decorated with colorful ornaments, and the square was filled with stalls and games. The villagers gathered with smiles, enjoying this special day. The giant also made an appearance in the village square. His large figure stood out, and the children, though a little surprised, approached him with curiosity. "Hello, Mr. Giant," one child bravely called out. The giant smiled kindly and slowly extended his hand to the children. "Hello, children. I hope you enjoy the day." The villagers watched this scene and smiled, realizing that the giant had truly become a part of their community. At the center of the festival, the village elder gave a speech. "We are here today because of Mr. Giant. We owe him our thanks, and we pledge to protect this village together with him." The villagers responded with applause, expressing their gratitude to the giant. The giant, too, quietly accepted their feelings of appreciation. Section 25. Hope for the future. After the festival ended, Emily and the giant returned to the mountain. They quietly looked up at the night sky, imagining the peaceful future of the village. "Our village will continue to be peaceful, won't it?" Emily whispered as she gazed at the stars. "Yes, as long as we're together, the village will always be safe." The giant agreed, placing a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. "Thank you, Mr. Giant. I'm so glad you're here with us." Emily smiled at the giant, her heart filled with gratitude. For a while, they sat silently, watching the stars. They both believed that the future of the village would be bright. The friendship between the giant and Emily would last forever, and the village would become an even safer and more peaceful place with their presence.